Welcome back to Cycle. And today we're talking about a more serious episode, I guess. And this time around, we have a new interview segment where we interviewed some individuals from our high school that we asked for opinions on the topic of our episode today. So yeah, I'll let Advi explain more about it.
Yes, so today we're going to be discussing a topic that has been increasingly visible online, mainly on mainstream social media platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and sometimes even YouTube Shorts.
Yeah, and that is the normalization and romanticization of disordered eating behaviors as wellness, discipline, or self optimization. I'm pretty sure y'all have seen those. And before we start, I'd like to mention a brief content note. This is more like a trigger
Very
warning
good.
too, I guess. This discusses eating behaviors, dieting, and eating disorder adjacent culture as it appears online. And this is not described in extreme detail, but it is a big topic. And these topics can still be sensitive for some listeners, so we encourage you to take care of yourself while listening. And if you need to step away, that's totally okay.
Exactly. And we also want to be very clear about something from the outset. In this episode, we're not categorizing all calorie tracking, dieting, or caloric deficits as inherently harmful or disordered. In many contexts, including medical care, athletic training, or short term nutritional education, these practices can be neutral or even beneficial.
Yeah, and in other words, today we're basically examining the cultural and psychological conditions under which the structure becomes rigid, moralized, or psychologically costly. And this is not talking about precisely the presence of structure on food, just to give out the differences. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like Anishua said, very psychology based, we're very research based, and our goal is not to label behaviors. We're not going to do any good or bad, but to understand how certain patterns are shaped, reinforced, and interpreted within digital environments, particularly for adolescents and young adults.
Like us. And I think it's about time we dive into the research then, shall we, Advi?
We shall.
So, I just want to let you guys know we will be reading off the statistics to ensure that our info is accurate, but we won't forget to tune you guys in on what it actually means. So we will be reading off something, but we won't forget to tell you guys what the information is actually telling you guys. So let's get into it. One of the most comprehensive examinations of this topic comes from a piece called The Relationship Between SNS Usage and Disordered Eating Behaviors, a meta analysis published on PubMed Central. And here they synthesize findings across numerous studies examining how social networking site use relates to eating behaviors and body image. And here they found consistent associations between greater social media use and increased body dissatisfaction, dietary restraint, and disordered eating behaviors, particularly among adolescents and young adults, which are basically audiences like us. So, what does that mean? Basically, these associations are strongest when social media engagement involves appearance comparison, basically comparing yourself to others on the internet, food tracking, like intense calorie tracking, or fitness focused content a lot of the time, like when you're scrolling and it's always fitness focused content, which I'm sure all of you have come across at some point. So, that is what this research says.
Yeah, it's like media pressure, right?
Yeah.
And what's important here is that the authors do not argue that social media causes eating disorders, and that's important. Instead, they emphasize patterns of association and vulnerability regarding these
Hmm.
platforms. From a neuropsychological perspective, this aligns with what we know about adolescent brain development. During adolescence, reward systems that respond to social validation are highly sensitive, while regions responsible for are high impulse control and long term planning are still developing. When food control or thinness is repeatedly paired with social approval, the brain learns to associate these behaviors with reward.
Yeah, exactly. And I just want to ask you, Advi, do you have any additional thoughts or points you'd like to contribute at this point?
Yeah, I do. Like
Great.
Anishua said, reward systems play a huge role in how people perceive control and approval. So right now, as we all know, we live in a digital age where we have consistent, almost unregulated access to the internet. Like literally, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And the internet happens to open up a whole dictionary of opinions, visuals, and point of views that adjust to the consumer's preferences and follow an algorithm for that specific palette, which
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure everyone knows by now.
Yeah.
Um, with that sort of setup, adolescents and others are constantly consuming content, and when that content is more or less aligned with a specific point of view, it begins shaping the person's point of view as well. It's like a scale tipping to one side, and you kind of only see one side of the picture.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's kind of how brains work. More exposure is more familiarity, reason, and just more comfort with the idea, regardless of verified validation. And the research below will emphasize how that works.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like the more you're exposed to it, the more familiar with it, and then when you try to explore a different
Yeah,
perspective, it's like, whoa, that's more incorrect from the perspective that I saw on social media.
yeah. Like a
Yeah.
really
Exactly.
comfy blanket that you're just so used to, and then you get out,
Yeah.
you know?
Exactly. So, and then we have another paper that talks about how this content becomes so pervasive. And here we look beyond individual behavior and examine platform structure. So, the paper's social drivers and algorithmic mechanisms on digital media helps explain how engagement based recommendation systems shape what users see. Basically, what Abby was kind of touching on earlier. So, the statistics describe how algorithms are designed to maximize attention by prioritizing content that evokes strong emotional responses. So, what does that mean, Anushwa? So, once a user interacts with food or body related content, the system often responds by offering more of it, like you've probably heard about the algorithm. And over time, increasingly extreme versions of this content show up.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure we have seen this pattern of repetitive content lead to these cultures or stereotypes surrounding the topics we've discussed so far as well, like the
yeah,
black pill
I
edits,
definitely agree.
for example. Yeah. At the same time, it's important to be precise here. Food tracking itself, as mentioned before, isn't inherently harmful. In
Hmm.
medical contexts for individuals managing conditions like diabetes or food allergies, or for athletes working with professionals, tracking can support executive function and reduce uncertainty. So it's not fully associated with the negative.
Yeah.
The problem arises when tracking becomes compulsive, inflexible, or disconnected from internal bodily cues. In those cases, numbers begin to override physiological signals, increasing cognitive load and stress rather than actually supporting your health.
Exactly. It's like your brain again sees it as a reward system, not as something that food is something your body needs to nourish itself and actually grow.
Mhm.
Yeah. And there's another study, a longitudinal study, which is titled Predictors of Dieting and Disordered Eating Behaviors from Adolescence to Young Adulthood, and this further reinforces this distinction. In its findings, they found that dieting during adolescence, even when it appears moderate or socially acceptable, predicts later disordered eating behaviors. And this basically suggests that early patterns of restriction, especially at a young age, can like immensely shape long-term relationships with food. And when you add in the whole algorithm and constant reward system instead of nourishment, that can completely alter the route of that person's relationship with food, especially from a young age.
Exactly. It's like it does leave an impact, I feel like.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
this brings us to the broader development context. Um, Adolescence and young adulthood are periods where identity, control, and self evaluation are especially important. When
Hmm.
food becomes a primary tool for managing emotions or asserting control, the brain learns to rely on restrictions rather than adaptability. So it can become like a part of your life that you feel like you can control and regulate,
Yeah,
and that in turn controls and regulates your emotional state and your well being. And yeah, basically, as Anishua said, it creates a sort of negative relationship.
Mhm. Yeah, well, all of that together can be really messy. But then again, we're not completely jumbling it up with actual professional like athletes who train and people who require it for medical reasons. This is simply just the effects of restricting at a young age. And at this point, we would like to open the floor to our interview segment. And this is a new section of our episodes, which we hope to expand on because I know hearing from other perspectives is very important. And here, the questions mainly focus on how the general population relates to food today and whether that relationship is trending in a positive or negative direction, and how it may be affecting people's relationships with their bodies and minds. So,
Yeah,
person one
exactly.
said that the general population's relationship with food is iffy. And I'm pretty sure you've all heard this, but calling people fat or big backs have been so normalized that people either brush it off or it messes with their head, creating a bad relationship or connotation with food. The fact that we feel the need to apologize when eating or taking some food from others further proves the point. That is what person one said. So, Advi, would you like to
Yeah,
share the other responses?
yes. Person two said they think that general population's relationship with food is slightly different for everybody in a way that causes a lot of confusion. They said that many people say to avoid things, and others say that certain things are good, and they feel like this can cause a lot of mental health problems. They think that this relationship with food is moving towards a more negative direction, and it's because there are many rules that people try to keep up with, and it can mess with the mind's perception of food. And
Right.
if this is a case of avoiding certain food groups, it can also cause deficiencies in some areas, and that this is doing
Mm-hmm.
a lot more harm to our bodies than having a varied diet.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the information and these responses correspond to what we mentioned earlier. The whole restriction creates a
Hmm.
bad psychological effect, and how these terms such as fat or big back they're thrown around so casually that the research
Every
supports
day,
the
every day.
psychological like yeah the effects it has, and it has a really big effect on people's relationship with food. I think that's really, personally, I think that's really like, what is it, undermined nowadays. So,
It is. Like, it's just so, like, saturated in everyday culture. It's just
mm-hmm.
thrown around.
Yeah,
And I feel like
it's become
there's like a
normalized.
very subconscious effect that terms like labels and just casual media can be cruel.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, no,
the
that's
most
basically what
careful,
they're saying.
pretty much, the most
Yeah.
careful conclusion we can draw from this, though, these trends do not create distress out of nowhere, but they can shape how distress is interpreted, managed, and
Mm-hmm.
reinforced. They offer a sense of control when life can feel messy or overwhelming, but that control often comes at the cost of trust in the body and mind.
Yeah, exactly. And just as other deterministic or rigid worldviews, the danger isn't that people notice patterns or want structure. It's valid to want structure, it's valid to have pattern recognition. But
Mm,
the real danger is when those patterns are treated as fixed truths rather than starting points for understanding. You see all this health and fitness content, you want to make sure it's a base where you understand how your body works, what your body needs to be nourished, but not revolving all your life around like specifically what social media is telling you about your body. So eating, like identity, it's not static. It's responsive, it's contextual, and very deeply human. We need it to survive, right? So,
exactly. Mhm.
yeah. But that brings us to the end of our episode today, and I know this was a pretty hefty topic. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed us talking about this topic because I'm pretty sure it's pretty prevalent in today's society. So, yeah, Advi, do you have
Yeah.
any finishing thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's it. It was definitely a heavy topic, but thank you for
Mm-hmm.
listening and sitting through with it for us, with us.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
So
you
thank
so
you for
much.
listening,
Bye.
and yeah, bye guys.